Why, hello, everybody. Oh, look at that. I forgot to do something. Ta-da. How are you doing, everyone? Oh, yeah. Welcome back to the channel. If you are not new, welcome if you're new. This is a debut this year, Jeff's Unknown. I created it last year. I didn't put too much effort into it, but now I'm going full throttle. This is it, baby. 2026 is the year of the Jeff's Unknown channel. We're going to have lots of fun. We're going to talk about everything. And today I have an amazing subject, the mark of the beast. And yeah, you got a lot of people who are evangelical right now are really saying, "Oh, really? You want to talk about that? Huh? You talking to me? Huh? You talking to me?" No, I'm talking about those who may not understand what it is. And remember, uh, uh, this is all constructed for people who are, you don't have to be Christian. You could be any faith. I mean, in every religion has a foundation of allegory and symbolism. Huh? Everything has symbology everywhere. And you have to understand a lot of these religions, well, most dominant religions that we worship now, we follow, um, were written a few thousand years ago. Now you have to understand that when you look back at that time, right? You got to think about, first of all, these people didn't have internet. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have chat GDP. They didn't have libraries. Oh, wait a minute. Did they have libraries? Yes and no. Yes, but not how the average person can go because the majority of everybody couldn't read or write. There you go. So I think we can give some type of appreciation that those texts that were written in a way had to be written of a future unknown, right? I mean, you're not going to grab somebody in 1865 and talk about a cell phone when even the conception of it was absolutely unrealistic. They could not. There were a few people that did peer into the future with an open mind that were able to grasp on certain things and saying, wow, how did he know? How did he know? But they did. And that I think is just putting, logic together and kind of shooting in the dark and getting bing. Oh, yes, I got it. Jules Verne had a lot of things that he wrote that we can correlate. We can like say, hey, listen, that's pretty interesting. George Orwell, 1984. Was it 1984? Oh my God. Was it 1984? I think that's it. Yes, 1984. Whew. For a minute ago, I double tapped there in my head saying, whoa, wait a minute. Was that 1984? Animal Farm. I remember reading Animal Farm in high school, and the people around me, the kids, are like, this is so boring. This is so stupid. But I'm like, no, you got to look at the context. And then the older you get, bang, But, when we look at the texts that talk about the mark of the beast, now, a lot of evangelical people, okay, my grandmother was an evangelist. I'm a Protestant, by the way. So my grandmother was like, oh, you gotta be careful, the rapture. And she kept on talking about the rapture all the time. And you got to understand, you got to pray to God, you got to submit. And all her life, she devoted her life to God and Jesus. And there's nothing wrong with that. At the last moment of her life, I know she made peace. Um, she made peace with God, and I could see it on her face that, that she was good with her beliefs and convictions. And you know what? And she died before even seeing any type of rapture. So the question is that this mark of the beast, it's in our time, it's happening now, it's in the future, it's gonna be. But let's sit down and take a step back. maybe this mark of the beast that we're talking about, maybe it's been here for a long time. And because it has come in a form that we don't know, that we can't correlate with biblical texts, that maybe we got to understand that their perspective, like for an example, if you were to talk to somebody in England 200 years ago, 300 years ago, or maybe even 400 years ago, they probably wouldn't understand what you're saying, even though we speak English, because their language, knowledge, lifestyle, convictions, narrative, whatever, every type of thing that you could think of, we go back, they might not understand anything we're saying, and vice versa. We could probably not understand what they're saying. Shakespeare, when he wrote Romeo and Juliet, was a very complex English, but very well detailed. If you read it properly, I loved Romeo and Juliet. If you read the text of Romeo and Juliet, it is so layered with symbolism and allegory, and also the fact that it opened up a possibility of reference. And I think this is when, in Revelations, when it was written exactly for that, to be diverse and be able to fill in the cracks of the unknown. Because in the Bible, if we look right here, and I just took out AI, and obviously I don't have a Bible with me right now, but it does say a symbolic conception of in the Bible that the describing a mark placed on the right hand or forehead, essentially for buying and selling. But if we really look at the references, the requirement of the mark of the beast, now the mark itself, we'll come back to that. The requirements is all people, rich and poor, free or slave, must receive it. Therefore, it is obliged. Now, what can we use as reference today? Have we noticed that everything we do now is being pushed on the internet? We can't just go to a bank and say, no, sir, you gotta apply online. You gotta do it online. You know what I'm saying? No, we don't need your money. We could do it online. We go to the bank, tell her, you could do it online. You could go and pay your bills online. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, but what about your job? Oh, don't worry. We have other things to do. Yeah. We have heard that many times, right? Or you go to self-serve. Now we're taking wing humans and we're replacing it digitally, right? Oh, no, we don't take money here. We only take card. So, you see? Buy and sell. So, basically, it is describing a system. Okay? Now, the requirement is the system must receive it. Now, receiving it means being connected to it, right? Okay. So, there, good. Location on the right hand, action, and on the forehead, mind and will. So now remember, the right hand is symbology, right? But what do we do with our right hand? We sign, we give consent, right? We sign with our right hand. I'm not talking about you lefties out there. I'm sorry. I don't want to be I don't know why I'm talking like an Italian mobster. I don't want to be, you know what I'm saying? But it's really true. They say you receive with the left, you give with the right, or something like that. And the fact is that's it. It's consent. Is consent to give consent your will. And on the forehead, it talked about the forehead, your mind, meaning that you have no other way of submitting, destroying the will for an alternative. You see, this is what we're talking about here. Okay, and I've talked to pastors, and they took out, and there was a couple of good pastors that I've had a good conversation with, who kind of explained it a bit like that. That, yeah, of course, the Bible's written, boom, 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 left and right, good, perfect, black and white on there, good, perfect, good, bang. But you got to understand that the Bible is a reference, but it's not just the reference. It's not just the word, right? If you think, like I said, I'm going a little evangelical, I'm very sorry, or spiritual, whatever, and it has nothing to do with religion I'm imposing. I'm just trying for you to understand when we talk about the mark of the beast, we have to understand what it is. And I know what it is. And I discovered it with my own mind and heart by sitting down and putting the puzzles together and saying, holy crap, it's been here for a while now. But a series of events have shown us, right? So let's continue. So, and the function is to enable economic participation, means being able to have the essentials. Now, I don't know if you remember back in 2022, well, the famous Canadian government froze bank accounts of truckers who were protesting. Now, I'm not here to talk about this. I'm just saying I'm using it as an example. So you take away the ability to use your money, you're a slave. You cannot function. Okay, not everybody has a few $1,000s in their in their little pouch under their bed. They don't have that. Everything is digital now. Take away that, you can't even use your banking. You can't purchase anything or anything like that. So do you understand where I'm going with this? This is not a conspiracy. This is what we're living. Okay, this is where we're living. This is what we're doing as a society. And this is where governments are pushing and business go digital. So if we look back again, the requirement is all people, rich and poor, means everyone in the society, free or slave. So no matter what you are, where you're from, must receive it. You have to take it. Where? On your right hand, which is, I think, is consent. You have to give your consent, because remember, have you noticed that every app that you put down on your telephone, anything you download, you have to give consent. Yes, sir. Terms and policy. You have to accept their terms. Otherwise, you ain't getting it. I just bought a Samsung TV. And in order for me to benefit from what that TV can provide, I have to consent for them to spy on me, take my information, and use it to their advantage. Well, I got a little two-finger honor. Here you go, sir. Okay, no. Thank God I have a TV box. So, okay. But imagine everything you do, everything you download, everything you touch, there's always terms and conditions. You give your consent. Otherwise, you ain't getting it. So are we really far from what the Bible's talking about, Mark of the Beast? Yeah. Look at email. Okay, when email came out, okay, Hotmail. Let's just use Hotmail for an example. Hotmail came out. Anybody can open an account. Now, you got to have another account. You got to use your phone. You got to link who you are. Now you got to have this pass key. You got to have a facial recognition or thumb in order to have their services. So are we far from it? Or are we getting really warm? Marco, Polo, is it really far from now? No, it's not. So let's look at a little more. All right. Oh, yeah. So the mark is completely loyal and worship to human rulers, not God, contrasting with the. So this is where we come into the fundamentals of why. Okay. And this is where I look here and says identification is the name of the beast or the number of its name. Excuse me. You remember they say in the Bible or somewhere in religious texts, let's say in Christian doctrine, that the greatest trick that a devil would ever make is to pretend he does not exist. Because if he did exist and he does, and if we could say, hey, look, therefore we have a visualization and confirmation that the forces in which try to play against humanity are real, right? But You have to understand that the mark is a brand, right? It's the brand. A brand is particularly a service or a company. You know, if we look at it today's terms, right? The mark, a mark could be like any type of mark, right? But when they refer it to the mark, we're talking about a centralization. And if you look on the stock market, you see that very few companies own everything. Very few, very few own everything. Therefore, there's a centralization. That means that there is a point, there is a source, a counter source to humanity. And this is where humanity, in all its retrospects, is losing the battle. And when I was telling you earlier before about the things in the past, right, and things that we can learn from the past, not far, you know, just about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a certain little something that paralyzed the whole world. And then all of a sudden, these little bad boys came out. Huh? You see that up there? Right up there. Okay. And you need one of those to have access to go to, I don't know, to the restaurant. And I'm coming from Quebec, so I know exactly what it is. And I've seen it with my own eyes. Okay. That beautiful little thing there, you needed that to go, I don't know, to stores, to restaurants. If you didn't, okay. And like I said, it's not a conspiracy. We're talking facts. These are things that happen. You can't live in denial. You can't live 6 feet under the ground. You can't stick your head in the sand because your ass is still exposed. So whatever, you were there, I was there. We lived through it. Okay. And that one right there showed me and saying, okay, so now everybody's jumping on that because apparently had no choice. We had no choice. People had no choice, right? To get one of those things in order to have access to, I don't know, certain elements in our society that we take advantage of. So therefore, I saw the rise of the conception of the mark of the beast. Now, a lot of people thought it was that, but no, it wasn't. It was a shadow of the actual beast. Okay, and it's a shadow. When I mean a shadow, it is the before it happens, or the before, or maybe some types of cracks that shine through and saying, "Hey, you might not think I'm real, but this is true. And you can't hide from me," because it was everywhere. I prayed to God and I said, please make people wake up. And then finally that stopped. But that was getting out of hand. Okay. But then I asked myself, okay, well, if that's not the mark of the beast and this wasn't the mark of the beast and whatever, the fact is, it's not the fact that it is in understandable terms. It is actually in a metaphoric way of how we react today, and how conformed humanity has become, and how we are willing to put away every little thing in order to benefit from the beauty little things that we take advantage of. So basically, we are the mark of the beast. We have become that very same thing that the Bible has taught us. The more that we become connected, more that we take away the independence of individuals, this is where we find ourselves in that particular state, which we call the matrix. And the matrix, in other ways, is a controlled environment. You know, you walk into someone's house, hey Siri, and all of a Siri, turn on the lights. You can start your car. You can turn down the lights, turn up the heat. You could do all types of things with your cell phone. Everything now you do with your cell phone. They know where you are, where you go. They know everything about it. Even though you turn off your settings, they know exactly where you are. They know what you purchase, what you look like, what you do. Because every time you look at your screen, the camera's pointing right at your face. So then you're telling me that the mark of the beast is actually something. And if they say the right hand, well, most people hold their phones in their right hand. I don't know, but I think it's metaphorically speaking. Because remember, you give consent, right? You shake your hands with the right hand. You're right on the right hand. It's metaphorically. The forehead represents the willpower. Okay, the mindset. Take away someone's phone from them for 24 hours and they're scratching on the wall like if they're high on not on Ritalin, but on cocaine or you know what I mean? Have you ever forgot your phone at home once? I did it for a whole weekend. I thought I wanted to die. I said, I can't believe this. I'm part of it. I can't believe it. And I realized how dedicated we are and associated and attached to these little things because all our lives are on there. Right? When we want to go pay for something, whenever we want to go, I don't know, want to go on trips. Oh, I'm going to book it online because everything's online. So right now, as we see, we're pushing ourselves completely to the edge right there, where the mark of the beast is the system in which controls everything. And you have to confide by it because, like I was telling you earlier, everything you do is in result your consent. Okay, nothing is imposed on you. That's what I told people during the famous narrative. Nothing is forced upon you. You give your consent to it. Rich or old, right? Poor and slave, non-slave, whatever. That means that the mark of the beast is the very system in which we have created, which we have given our consent to create that false illusion of control when nothing is, so that the control of that beast of the source could tell you what's the next thing and the next person to vote for and who not to vote for and what to consume and not to consume, what to believe and what not to believe and how to feel and not feel. Because if you looked at people today, they don't look like normal people. They look like walking zombies. Go to a waiting room, go anywhere, everybody's on their cell phone, and you actually look at what they're looking at. They're really not looking at nothing. There is no thought. There's no memory. There's no development. Just control. There's another book that came out I read, and it was Fahrenheit 4. Is that it? Is that what it's called? Oh, perfect. Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Ray Bradbury. Fahrenheit 451. I read that book in high school. I don't think they read these books today. I don't think they do it. 451 was a glimpse into the future. Fictional, obviously. Just like George Orwell, where they had these special brigades that if they found books, they burned them. They did not want people to think for themselves. And in each person's ear or ears, they had constant information being processed, aka the cell phone today. So people don't think. Think about this. This book was written. When was it written? 1960 something, I think. I think so. I'm not too sure. I know it was quite a bit. It is a 1953 novel. Okay, 1953, right after the Second World War, because we realized that the Nazis were burning books, right? Because we all know that. That's history fact. They were burning books because they want to rewrite history. Today, well, in that novel, was burning books so they can control the narrative, control what they can tell you, control what you can think and do and react and feel. So that book, if you haven't read it, it even came out with a movie. The movie was okay, but the book was amazing. Right? Because if you can think for yourself, you are free. Right? They don't want that. That's exactly what this thing does. Okay? If you really understand the concept of that the past has warned us, and even a biblical reference saying that the mark itself will touch everybody and that everybody will have to conform because otherwise they will not be able to buy or sell. That means to consume. Consume is to eat food, right? That's why do you think it's so weird all of a sudden now cities and towns are limiting on people on how they can not make, they don't want them to make gardens and stuff. You can't even collect water from the rain. You can't have chickens. You can't be independent. No, you got to buy what they tell you to buy. So, ladies and gentlemen, the mark of the beast, that is the question. Is it going to come? Is it going to be that little chip they have in your hand that they say they were going to do? Or that chip in your forehead, which is totally bullshit, because eventually that's where we're going to head. But the mark of the beast has been here for a long time. It's just that right now we starting to be in it. We could taste it. We could see it. We could feel it. And I can't say I think we're already in it completely, but we haven't closed the door yet. But once we do, they're coming out with all facial recognition and stuff like that. Once they can control every aspect of you, then we've closed the door and accepted the evil in which it represents. Domination, control, and nothing will ever be able to come in without them approving. Ladies and gentlemen, have yourself a great one. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe, especially subscribe. It's important. And leave a message if you feel something different. But remember, you are nothing but free of mind, body, and soul. It's when you give your consent, that's when it changes. Have a good one, everybody.